AMIC, which is the territory partner for Meet Business Women. And I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land from where I'm coming from today, which is the Camaragal people in the lower North Shore of Sydney. Today we're covering a masterclass with Dalene, Wray and Lizzie McClymont. Sorry, I'm just getting rid of a little pop-up screen that's happened just here. My apologies. That's going to be talking about how to lead and be led by progressive women. But just before I jump into that, I've just got a very small little overview of Meet Business Women in terms of membership and what they offer for those that are new to Meet Business Women have joined this class outside of membership for a bit of a free one. So as I mentioned, AMIC is the territory partner. I just want to double check that you're seeing this screen share with the AMIC. Thanks, Dalene, for the thumbs up.
Strategic. We're still seeing the beautiful photo of Lizzie and I, not the AMIC screen.
Oh, okay, it's not scrolling. My apologies. Let me just, I've lost a bit of functionality going on here. Try again. What happens when you work with two screens?
That's it.
We're up now?
Yep.
Fabo, thank you. So yes, AMIC is the exclusive territory partner in Australia, and I'd also like to acknowledge a number of our global strategic members. Within this global strategic members, we have some Australian key partners in Coles and JBS, and also acknowledgement to our Australian country members in Australian pork and sheep producers. Meet Business Women is, you can have an individual membership, or there's the corporate level memberships. Individual membership, I think it's less than a cup of coffee a day, gives you access to a number of exclusive events such as this one, as well as access to some more face-to-face conferences that happen. There's also some great exclusive content online as well that can give you access to a bank of resources to supporting you in your industry journey, career, etc. Global Mentoring is a fantastic platform that was also newly launched last year. It joins mentors and mentees together in the right good connection to, again, elevate from both sides, having a mutual relationship there. So check that one out. And we put together gender representation reports in the meat industry that looks at some of the statistics on benchmarking gender representation. The last one was done in 2020. That report is available online, and they'll be doing a new one. The Meet Business Women UK team, we're doing a new one towards the end of this year into early next year, and they'll be bringing in gender diversity as well. Cultural and demographic diversity as well as just gender. So that cultural background as well. Sorry, there's somebody chatting, not on mute. If you can just mute your microphone, that would be great. Thank you. So today's masterclass, as I mentioned, I'd like to say, sorry. No. Whoever, if I can just get the one of our hosts from OBE Organic, Kim, if you can just go through and just mute participants, thank you. So we have masterclass today with Dalene, Wray and Lizzie McClymont. Dalene is Managing Director of OBE Organic. And OBE Organic is a farmer-owned Queensland organic beef company. OBE Organic has emerged as a progressive exemplar for innovation in the organic beef industry and broader red meat industry. Dalene is a major force for improving the sustainability of the Australian beef industry by driving change, innovation and digital adoption at OBE Organic. Dalene is focused on using her professional networks and influence for the good of her community, her industry, our animals and the planet. She is known for her innovative and out-of-the-box thinking, championing of women's empowerment, enhancing the profile of Australian organic agricultural product, and for speaking widely on the unique opportunities and challenges which SMEs experience in overseas markets. Dalene grew up in the iconic outback Queensland town of Birdsville. She started her career as a radiographer and then as a tour guide in France before joining OBE Organic back in 2003. Between 2009 and 2015, Dalene gained invaluable international business experience whilst living in Beijing and then Hong Kong, driving business opportunities for OBE Organic in Asia and the Middle East, and her active involvement in the Hong Kong, Australia expat business community served to further enhance Australia's profile and the reputation of the Australian beef industry offshore. Lizzie is a young agribusiness professional and an exceptional advocate for the Australian meat industry through her previous role as meat sales manager at Morton Co. in southeast Queensland. Lizzie has managed the sales of premium grass-fed, grain-fed Angus and Wagyu beef under the Phoenix Beef brand to customers throughout Australia, North America, Europe, and the Middle East. Lizzie's connection to the meat industry began at birth, where she was raised on her family's mixed cropping and livestock grazing operation before going on to complete a Bachelor of Animal Science with honours and meat science at UNE in Armidale, New South Wales. Pre-COVID, Lizzie lived and worked in Ireland and the UK, managing a key retail account for an Irish meat processor. And it was during this time that she developed an interest in the retail sector, exploring consumer demands and purchasing behaviours. Lizzie's professional experience working offshore means she has had some strong connections to diverse customers around the world and has gained experience in beef production, supply chain management, and marketing. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Dalene and Lizzie to today's masterclass. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thanks, Catherine. Over to you, Lizzie.
Yep, absolutely. So Dalene, you just had a little introduction, but could you give us, tell us a few things about yourself that we don't already know?
Yeah, I think this is really, thanks for the question, Lizzie, and it's really important for everyone in the audience that we've got over 80 people listening in today, and you might have heard that spiel about me before, for those of you that know me. And it's like eye roll, gosh, do we have to listen to it again? But I think what's really important is the stuff that you don't know about me, and also that you don't know about Lizzie. And you might consider the background to your teams, the people above you and below you in your workplace, and what don't you know about them? What might be useful to know about them, and then how can that benefit your career and your business? So for those of you that don't know my background, I've had a few careers. I've got a Bachelor of Applied Science in Medical Radiations, which is a fancy term for being a radiographer or someone that takes x-rays. So I've worked on the front line in accident and emergency in places like the Toowoomba Base Hospital, the Broken Hill Base Hospital, and also in hospitals in the UK. I've been a tour guide in Europe for a number of years. I was based in Nice in France. I speak a few languages. So I speak French fluently. Bonjour à les gens qui parlent français aujourd'hui. I also can have a bit of a go at Spanish. Hola a Maria que escucha ahora. And I've also studied Chinese and Italian, although my Chinese is limited to preschool Chinese, I have to say. I also can get by in Afrikaans because I'm half South African. I'm an accredited mental health first aider, and some of you in the audience might know what that means. But what it means to me is that I'm accredited, I've had training, and my trainer is actually in the audience today. A big shout out to Sharon Orapaleng. So she trained me for 2 days in how to deliver mental health first aid. And interestingly enough, it doesn't often happen in crisis situations. It happens every day in my workplace and in my industry. Yeah. Something else that you might know about me is that I love surveys, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later and how important surveys are for your career. But in an online survey that I did a couple of years ago, my strongest trait was spirituality. So I feel very good about that because I think that accurately describes me. But I also found out my weakest trait, which is actually humour. Can you imagine what that felt like when I found out that I'm statistically not funny? So I have spent the last couple of years trying to be more funny, but I don't get very many laughs out of my team, but I'm going to own it that I'm not a funny person. I'm reliable, I'm authentic, and for those of you that know me well, I'm rarely early for anything. So Catherine, you're very lucky that I turned up 20 minutes early for this event. Now, Lizzie, people might know you from your most recent role at Morton Co, or perhaps when you worked for Obi, but tell us something that we don't know about you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So as Catharine mentioned, I was raised on my family's property in southeast Queensland, but I've actually worked on a dairy and sheep farm in New Zealand. I've studied abroad in Wyoming in the USA. I've worked for a large meat processor in Ireland and the UK, and then now settling back into a remote role based on a farm near Moonee, Queensland, where I work for Elders as a marketing business partner. I'm on the board for the Co-op grocery store in Gundawindi, which is a very well suited to my low-key obsession with grocery stores and retailers. I've just joined the organising committee for the 2022 Young Beef Producers Forum, which ultimately is an educational capacity building and networking event for young people in the Australian beef industry. So this year's event is held in Roma on Thursday the 18th, Friday the 19th of November. So yeah, I encourage anyone who hasn't been to that forum before to definitely get involved and head out there, especially if you're young and in the industry. Now to the link between Dalene and myself. In 2016, I was fortunate to have accepted my first role out of university as a sales and production executive led by Dalene at OB Organic. I was there for 2 years, and it really did form the foundation to me going into my 6+ years working in international meat sales, and more recently transitioning, as I said, into this state-based marketing role with Elders.
Thanks, Lizzie. Now, you and I don't mind an opinion. I've been described as direct, and I don't think that was a compliment, but I'm going to own that as well. So I'm not funny and I'm direct. So Lizzie, since we're all here in the audience to really talk about this subject of gender in the industry, I'd love to know what you see when you look out in our industry that we're all part of, the sort of 83 people that are in the room today.
Well, I've sort of looked at this question. I've got something that we could work on and something that I think is really positive. So I'll start with what we could work on. I really do still see an industry that is struggling to keep up with the modern expectations of providing workplaces that create equal opportunities, particularly for women. But then on the other hand, I see some excellent women leading the way and bulldozing pathways for young women like myself. And that one example of that would be yourself, Dalene. But having sort of growing in my career, I can certainly realise and relate to the fact that it's very hard work, and the resilience that these women show is outstanding.
Thanks, Lizzie. And I guess from my point of view, and we can't throw to the audience, but hopefully some of these messages resonate with you, is that I see lots of older men in leadership roles in our industry. And by leadership, I'm talking in domestic and export beef companies, but also the CEOs and chairmen of peak industry bodies. But I also see many women that are visible in leadership roles, and I know many who are not visible. So I'm talking about Fiona Simpson, who's the chair of the National Farmers Federation. I'm talking about Senator Susie McDonald and Georgie Somerset, who's the chair of AgForce here in Queensland and also on the board of the National Farmers Federation, and RFDS Queensland and ABC. And we heard from them about a month ago on the last MBW Masterclass. And for those listening in that weren't able to attend that Masterclass, the link has been shared, and I really recommend that you try and watch it in arrears. Now, these are just 3 of the women who are role models for me, and I also see many women who are less visible but no less impactful and important to our industry. And I guess that's where I want to focus today. Some of you are in the room. Some of you know who you are. You're emerging leaders, and some of you have the capacity and capability or desire to be a leader, and you're not there yet. And some are clueless to the fact that they have these capabilities that are unrealised. So what we're going to do over the next 40 minutes is talk about how we can take the women, and it's every single one of you listening in that have the capability to influence positive change in our industry and give you the capacity and opportunity to do so.
Yeah, and that's a really good point you raised, and I'd love to explore more. When you mentioned capacity and opportunity, they're both such interesting points. I think that we should kick it off by getting into these a bit more. So if I can give you an example of a time during my role with OB Organic, I was encouraged by you as the leader, Dalene, to attend all sorts of different forums and events, industry-related events and forums. And just as an example, I think there was, Rural Press Club and MLA and AMIC events. And what I've come to learn outside of working for OBE is that it's very often only the senior levels of management who get invited to these events, and also who attend these events. So I'd love for you to share with us why you think it's important to encourage less experienced employees in workplaces to have these opportunities, and how you think it benefits the employer and the organisation.
Okay, thanks, Lizzie. Lots of questions, but I'll tackle them hopefully. So you're right. I do push my team to attend events. Sometimes they want to go, and sometimes they really don't want to go. I think if it's in the afternoon and involves a few drinks, I've got a few people that sign up for it. But some other events, people are less inclined to do so. So I think taking or encouraging less experienced team members to attend industry events not only builds confidence in employees, but it makes them feel important too. It develops their networking skills and also their professional networks. So our obligation, I think, for our young folk and our emerging leaders is to give them every opportunity to develop their professional networks. And unfortunately, that doesn't work behind a screen. It empowers employees. But what I found is that I do often get employees who decline an offer to attend these events. And what I think it's really important to do as a manager is to understand why they're declining. It might be that they think they've got too much work to do. So I think it's important for us to provide them with appropriate cover, or give them some scope to finish that body of work a little bit later. Perhaps they are too nervous to physically travel to an event in their local community, in the city nearby, or interstate on their own, as they've not done it before. And I know for those of you that are listening in that are quite experienced with domestic or international travel, it's hard to believe that you would have someone in your team that would feel nervous to drive to Brisbane or Sydney and then get on a flight to Melbourne or Brisbane for an industry event. But it literally can be quite daunting. And so what I've done in those situations is I've often sent someone with them. I'll give you a really tangible example of this. Is a few years back, I had a situation where I wanted one of my senior team members to attend an industry event at Canberra at Parliament House. And whilst the person in question was a very experienced executive in the meat industry in Australia, asking them to travel to Canberra and go to Parliament House scared the pants off them. And so they had all sorts of reasons why they couldn't go, but I knew it was important for OBE and I knew it was important for their career. So I persisted and insisted. But what I did need to do was, I had another team member that was in Canberra at the time. So I asked them to go to the Canberra airport to meet my colleague, to meet them at the airport, to sort of wave at them as they came through to get their bags, and then travel with them to Parliament House and attend the event with them. And I don't think this particular team member would have gone if we hadn't have put that in place. So I think as you move up through the food chain, and I'm going to talk about food chain quite a lot through this process, we tend to forget what it was like to be nervous. You don't have to be young and nervous. You can be quite experienced and nervous. And we do need to put things in place to support those people that need a little bit of extra support to get to these events. And I think capitalising on opportunities to attend industry events doesn't just happen. With so many competing priorities, it's easy, I think, for leaders to consider invitations on whether it's going to benefit me or my business. And very rarely do we consider these opportunities about whether it's going to benefit us or our network. So again, Dalene Wray gets invited to a round table with a government minister. I'm thinking about the minister, I'm thinking about industry priorities, I'm thinking if we've got messages that I'd like to get to the minister, and I decide yes or no on that basis. Well, I used to. What I do now is consider the invitation and think, okay, am I the best person to attend? Is there someone else in my network that I think should be there? And it can possibly be a competitor of mine, but I think their voice might amplify some of the messaging that I've got. I might also ask if I can bring a +1, and I don't ask them to sit at the same table as the minister. It might be that I would like to invite them as an observer. And I think it's very powerful to give young people the opportunity to observe interactions around a boardroom table. Sometimes this comes at a cost, and that means that I have to pay. So I might be invited to be a guest of someone's at an event. It's an expensive event, you know, everyone knows everything seems to cost $160 these days for lunch. You don't get away with less than $160 a ticket. So you're thinking, why on earth would I spend $160 on my most junior employee when I've got a free ticket and money's tight at the moment? So sometimes I think we do have to spend $160 or the $320 on 2 tickets so that you can have a +1 and they can get the experience of these events. Also, for those of you that do know me or see me on LinkedIn, you'll see I often attend events with an industry peer called Amy Brooks. Now, she was due to join us today, but she can't, so we can't spotlight her. Amy doesn't work for Obi. She is at the same level in her career as I am, but we started in the industry together. But what makes Amy extra special to me, besides the fact that we started our career together, is that she's Indigenous. She's a Wali Wali woman from Central Queensland. And I think her voice is very powerful. It's very eloquent, but she often, she's in marketing. She's in a marketing role, so she doesn't often get invited to the same events as I do. That being said, I think her voice is very important around a number of the tables that I get the opportunity to sit around. So I will often invite Amy as my +1. I think that's an example where you don't have to limit your invitations to people in your team or people in your business. We can extend them to people who might be considered competitors, because it's really important that we're getting the voices of culturally and linguistically diverse women and women of colour around boardroom tables. And by the way, when we become busy as leaders and important, so I just call myself important, so I'm not, or important and busy, or we just busy and we think we're really important, we move from one invite to another, and we can sometimes feel that we're so busy that we can't go to all these things that we're invited to, and that's absolutely ridiculous. I think we need to look at the invitations and think about who will benefit most from this invite, and then make sure they get the opportunity to attend. And following on from some comments that Georgie Somerset made in the last MBW event, and I encourage you, those that haven't watched it, to watch it, is her comments were, please turn up, but once you turn up, you have to say something. Lizzie, you've got some interesting feedback on what it was like to turn up to an event and say something in a room full of men, and men who are much more experienced than you. What was that like?
Yeah, I have more than one experience of that when I was working with OBE, just having that opportunity to be involved in those kind of discussions. But one particular one I can remember was, I think, I don't remember what the forum was, but you pushed us to, or encouraged a few of us young employees to go along to an AMIC state-based forum, sort of like a round table. We all sat around, it was about 20 people in the room, sat around a big rectangle and had an opportunity to put forward our ideas or contribute to different AMIC initiatives. And I think, I always think back to that certain experience, because I think at the time I must have been about 23 years old and up against people who'd been in the industry for double my age probably or more. And it just, the confidence that it gave me, and just the experience, and just really the thought of feeling, I know you mentioned that feeling important, or that being important, but for a 23-year-old to feel important is it goes a long way, and to hold that confidence and build the confidence. And I imparting advice to my peers who are listening today, I recognise that it can certainly be daunting to go along to these events, but I definitely would say that if you're ever given the opportunity, or just try and push for that opportunity with your leaders and your managers, and go to everything that you possibly can, because it really does build your confidence and build your network. Yeah, so Dalene, you've been doing it for a while, and I know that you know usually everyone in the room when you go to these events, and you probably don't get nervous anymore. But I certainly do.
Well, I kind of used to go to events where I knew everyone in the room, but I stopped going to them anymore. And there's a reason why, which I'll tell you about in a sec. But speaking about confidence and ego, my son is 7 years old, and this week he's been particularly difficult, and he was particularly cruel yesterday, and he said to me, "Mum's an error. Go away to another family." So honestly, your ego can get a bit ahead of you sometimes, and you can be 23 years old in the meat industry and have a pretty big ego, or you can be 46 years old in the industry and have a pretty big ego. But I think it you can be put back down to earth pretty quickly with comments like mum's an error. Fortunately, I brushed that off and I don't take it too personally. We have to be careful not to take criticisms too personally. So attending events. So I did used to go to lots of events, and there were lots of people in the room, most often men or older men. But I don't tend to go to so many anymore, and there's a reason for that. And it's because it's sometimes for me white noise, like it's the same conversations with the same people at the same time, and I sometimes don't feel like we're getting anywhere. We have at OB Organic a gender diverse board, which means that we have more women than men on our board, and we have 50% women, 50% men in our leadership team. And one of our directors is Ms. Deirdre Lander, and she's spent 3 terms as a director of OB, and she finishes in June this year. She was based in Hong Kong, so I met her when I lived in Hong Kong, and she comes from a HR background, and she's been an amazing mentor for me, and she's given me so many opportunities that I wouldn't have had without her sage advice. And she said to me, and Lizzie was working for OB at the time, and we've reflected on this in preparation for this meeting. Deirdre Lander said, if you know everyone in the room, you're at the wrong event. So what's the point of going to an event where you know everyone, you feel very comfortable, you're having the same conversations with the same people? I think about that also in the context of strategy. So, Ag, I do find that the same consultants are often used for strategic planning. And so I consider not only who's going to be in the room, I consider if the room has a diverse group of people in it, will there be any people of colour? Will there be any people from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds? And also who's the consultant? And if it's the same consultant that completed the last strategic plan, then I think we're going to get the same result.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we'll, looking back on that comment from Deirdre, I remember that being made, and then immediately after I was on a plane to Emerald going to a grains conference. From working for an organic grass-fed beef company to a grains conference was very, very different, but at the same time you network with a diverse range of people, and you just the different things you pick up and you learn by doing or working with different people is certainly important to organisations. Dalene, during my time at OBE, it was always clear to all of us that we were very involved in the strategic direction of the organisation. We had a clear visibility on the financials and the success of the company. Why do you think it's important to give this type of visibility to all of your team members?
Oh, Lizzie, I can't overemphasise how important it is that we share what's going on in our business with our newest, and newest doesn't mean most junior, but often you've got new and junior team members coming on board. And it is quite uncommon in our industry where there's a fair amount of hierarchy. And I mentioned the word food chain before, and I think you all know what I'm talking about. There's the people above you, and there's your level, and then there's the people that are below you. And I suppose it's not just the ag industry like that, but it seems to be quite common in the ag industry. So what you've asked me is, what's the benefit of keeping your most junior, your most newest team members abreast of what's going on? I think at a very basic level, they often know more about what's going on at the coalface than you do. And if you've empowered them to speak up, then they're more likely to tap you on the shoulder and provide you information which might be contrary to what you know to be true. Because remember, we're all trying to keep our jobs, we're all trying to get pay rises, we're all trying to impress the boss, which sometimes means not telling the boss the whole truth, or maybe sharing with the boss their version of the truth, or endorsing their opinion or endorsing their project, which may actually have some critical issues with it. So if you're only hanging out with the top end of town, if you're only hanging out with the executive level, if you're only hanging out in the executive suite, or listening to people like you, so people from the same cultural background as you, then I think to myself is, how much tactical information are you missing out on? But I think, Lizzie, speaking up is not a given. It takes confidence and practice. So just because I go to you, Lizzie, and say, I'd be really interested in your thoughts on a new strategic plan for the meat industry, doesn't mean you're going to tell me what you really think. I think that takes time, and you have to trust the person that's asking that question. What we do at OB Organic is offer opportunities to learn to speak up in our staff meetings each week. We proceed with a pretty strict agenda, and the first question we ask is, how are we living our mission and values? We ask team members to share a customer moment. We express gratitude to others or reflect on things that make a good day at work. Okay, I know there's some eye rolls in the audience because, believe it or not, around my team, I asked that question an hour and a half ago, and we still get this sort of, oh God, you know, I can't believe she's still asking me that question. But seriously, I literally do ask these questions, and if I get silence, I look at one of my team, and today it was Will, and I said, would you like to express gratitude to someone in the room? And we all get a bit of a laugh until someone says thank you to someone else. And no, it's not a classroom. What we're learning to do here is to be prepared for these situations, to think on your feet, think about what you might say and articulate your perspective clearly. Then we go on to the next agenda item, and I ask the following set of questions. What has gone well? What are you most proud of? What special ceremonies have we attended? And I ask a team member to reflect on their personal success. Oh my God, that's so awkward, trust me. Yes, I've got confidence to speak up and tell people what I'm proud about yesterday, and it's often because, you know, I've got my son to do something that he really doesn't want to do. This process is disgustingly democratic. You simply can't get away with saying nothing. And I'll just keep asking the question a different way until I get the answer, until I get an answer, right? It builds confidence, especially in timid team members. And once you learn to speak up in the office, then it's likely that you'll have more confidence to speak up at industry and events. And I think this opportunity also gives employees time to think about the messaging that they're putting out there. So our agenda stays the same every week. The meeting happens at the same time each week. So they know I'm going to throw to them at some stage. And so they need to think about what they're going to say. Now, waffling might be okay around the water cooler or in the pub, but once you're in a position to influence industry policy, you really need to think about how you craft a statement, and you really need to be able to think on your feet. Something else that we pay careful attention to in our staff meetings is the order of agenda items. And I realised some time ago that often the boss, which in my case is, I realised some time ago that the boss, which in my case is me, does all the talking in staff meetings. So I don't know how, maybe someone took me aside and told me that I was talking too much or I was too direct, and so I had to think about that a little bit. So how do you stop me or the boss or the person who speaks a lot from getting too much airtime in staff meetings? What I also found is that when that person, either the boss or someone that speaks too much, gets too much airtime, then really important things fall off the agenda, and then everyone looks around and goes, oh, we have to shut up, got another meeting to go to, we'll do that next week. And so there's all these people that miss the opportunity to say what they wanted to say or bring their ideas to the meeting. So it's often items, and these are often items to be delivered by some of the newest, youngest team members. So what we did was we changed the agenda around, and now we start the topics which give the quieter team members the opportunity to speak up. And that means the people like me that speak a lot, we get cut off at the end instead of the younger team members.
Yeah, those weekly staff meetings, I've never been in an organisation since that's kept them. You know, lots of companies say, yeah, we're going to have a team meeting every week, or we're going to have it every day. And a lot of the time, exactly what happens, people get too busy and we stop it for 1 week and then it doesn't go on, and then we might pick it back up 3 months later. But I think that was something that you really stuck with at OBE, is having that, and how important it was to keep that staff meeting going. And I think you got two different types of employees, some that aren't confident and some that do have confidence. So you're tailoring the ones with confidence to, or teaching them how to express things more tailored, express, maybe their issues or comments and answers to the questions in the staff meeting. And then you're also building confidence of the quieter peers. So it really does go both ways for two different types of staff members. So want to move into social media now, Dalene. I know that you've got a large profile on LinkedIn, and you're very well versed on all suite of social media. So how important do you think social media is to your professional development?
So I think LinkedIn's really important for your professional development, and I think social media is super important for our industry and our businesses, and I can't overstate that. But we have to be really careful with how we use it in our personal professional lives. I think it's really important to recognise that your personal brand has some value. I think the younger generation do understand that, and my impression is the older generation don't think it's as important. I think it is very important to understand that it has some value. But rather than think about how you can build your brand to benefit yourself, I prefer to think about how a strong profile and following on platforms like LinkedIn can benefit others. As we move through our careers, I think we underestimate the opportunities that will come our way or have come our way, and perhaps we overestimate how many others are afforded the same opportunity. Remember that not everyone sees the same content as you on LinkedIn. So there could be opportunity after opportunity after opportunity for you, and you're vetting them all, and you're deciding you're only going to apply for the really good scholarship or that to attend that really good event for free. And you're assuming that everyone else in your network is seeing the same content. That's not how algorithms work. For example, just because your business is a member of a peak industry body like AMEC, and I, as a leader in the organisation, receive their newsletters, doesn't mean that anyone else in our organisation does. There are so many opportunities in the AMEC newsletter. It's beholden on us to pass them on to our team and our networks. But so often we don't, because we're busy and important, or important and busy, or busy and think we're important. I might scan the newsletter content. To be honest, I'll scan it and see if it's relevant to me and my business. And but I also consider whether it's relevant to us. And us, I don't mean just the few people that work for OBI. We're an SME. I think about my network. I think about Lizzie. I think the women that have worked with me and the women that I admire, many who are in the room today. And this was brought home to me recently when I received a message on LinkedIn for a man from a culturally and linguistically diverse background that was in my peer network on LinkedIn. And he thanked me for reposting about the Lord Mayor of Brisbane Multicultural Leadership Program. Turns out he, being culturally and linguistically diverse, didn't have the same profile as me on LinkedIn and didn't see that opportunity. And because I reshared it, he applied for the scholarship after seeing me repost it, and he was accepted into it. And he said it changed his life. And I know he has changed jobs since then, and I do believe it was quite impactful. So too often we post content on this platform with images of ourselves, hard at work, attending events with a celebrity or a celebrity chef or someone famous. And don't worry, I do my fair share of that, which serves to build a narrative about ourselves. Sorry, I've just lost you there. Less often do I see people sharing a call to action and sharing other people's opportunities. And Lizzie, I just want to talk about the LinkedIn newsfeed. So I realised about 18 months ago that I was scrolling through my LinkedIn newsfeed, and it was content that was photos of white men. I'm not joking. I scrolled through my LinkedIn feed just down and down and down and down, and it was photos of white men. Great content. Amazing content, right? Amazing opportunities, but it was always a photo of 2 or 3 men talking about something they'd launched or an event they'd attended. And I thought to myself, how is it that I am culturally and linguistically diverse? I'm a woman who advocates for women's outcomes, that I don't see more content from other people. And then I realised how I did some research and found out how these algorithms worked. Then I was like, I'm going to game this LinkedIn algorithm. So I spent a lot of time connecting with people of colour, liking, commenting on their networks. There's a new organisation that I've just started to follow. Now I'm going to ask Sharon to put them in the messages here. I think it's the Ethnic Association of Queensland. Sharon, if you don't mind putting a few links to some of the organisations you're involved in. They do amazing content. And there's actually great opportunities, believe it or not, for me, let alone my network, that I wouldn't have had if I hadn't have started to try and make my LinkedIn newsfeed more representative of my life and what I believe in. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox now, Lizzie.
That's right. So, but tell us how you train and coach your staff or your team to be more active on platforms like LinkedIn?
Well, I think the hardest part is getting people to stand in a photo, Lizzie. I think you and I don't mind manning up and putting on our game face for a photo, right?
Yeah.
But most people don't. You've got to cajole them. You've got to get them to vet the photo before they let it go out on LinkedIn. I get that. But in the absence of creating their own content, I love to see our team liking and sharing the content we're putting out on the OB Organic social pages. But I think the use of social media in a workplace setting requires an incredible amount of discipline. Now, rather than work to a system that's designed to keep you glued to your screen, I remove the temptation completely. So I've just spent 5 minutes telling you how important it is to think about your personal brand, and there's a place for you to build it on LinkedIn. I know that I'm being tempted. These products are designed to keep me looking at LinkedIn instead of doing my job. So what I've done is I got off Facebook 8 years ago and I haven't looked back personally. I've removed all social media apps from my work phone and my personal phone, and I only allow myself to log into LinkedIn on my work computer after midday for 5 minutes and before 5 p.m. for 5 minutes. Now, maybe it gets to 6 or 7 minutes, to be honest, but I'm super disciplined about it. And when I've had a quick scan through the LinkedIn feed, I log out and close the browser. Really important, log out, close the browser. I also have a very complicated password, so it's not that easy for me to log back in. And when it's off your browser, you're not tempted to just flick on it when you shouldn't be flicking on it. A useful tool, I don't think many people would have heard of this before, for checking your influence, for want of a better word, on LinkedIn, is to review your SSI score. It's called your Social Selling Index. Your LinkedIn Social Selling Index measures how effective you are at establishing your professional brand, finding the right people, engaging with insights, and building relationships. While it's fun to compare yourself with others, it's most useful to track progress if you're looking for improvement in this space. So have a Google for those of you that don't know what it's about, and you can check your score and then decide if you think you should improve it or not.
Awesome. Thanks, Dalene. Now we're going to move into talking about empathy and understanding of your employees' personal circumstances. So looking back at my time at OBE, just as an example, when I would go on leave, on annual leave, or any of my colleagues would go on annual leave, we were always really well covered for that period. And we always, strictly no phone while we're on annual leave. And being in a sales role and being, customer centric, it's a difficult thing to do, to switch off your phone while you're on annual leave, but I've learned to understand that it's very important to do it. And OBE always puts steps in place to make sure that all of the team were very well covered during that time. So there were no secrets with whose customers were doing what. Everyone was covered. Everyone knew what was going on. And there was always someone to step in if customer had a query during a time while you're on annual leave. So Dalene, I think we've had a few questions on this as well. It'd be really good if you could share with us why you think it's important to change the shift from I probably hadn't really explained this either, but there is this competitive overwork culture, especially in the meat industry, and it's a bit of a competition really. So who works the most hours, who took the latest phone call, after hours. Someone will come in the next morning and brag, and I took a phone call at 10 p.m. last night. But yeah, you're someone who manages a successful career while raising your 3 children with your husband. So why do you think it's important to change the shift from this competitive overworking culture in the industry to one with more balance? Can you also share with us some steps you've put into place at OBE to ensure this balance is actioned?
I think it's I think we spend a lot of time in our business and lives and careers focusing on what everyone else is doing wrong. I do it myself. We're all at fault for doing this. So we blame the business we're in, the leaders, the crew that you work with. It's all their fault. They're not doing things right, and that's why you're in the circumstances you are. What I try and do is have empathy. So kindness begins with understanding that we all struggle. And we need to, what I do, and I have to because I've got obligations with my kids for school pickup and also picking them up from after school hour care, is we create a culture from the top of no meetings after hours and no work calls out of hours. Now, you might say, so some of you in the audience will already be doing that, and some of you will say, that is absolutely ridiculous, Dalene. Of course you need to take work phone calls out of hours because there's all these emergencies. At OB, we literally don't, and it's not because we don't work hard, it's just discipline, and the discipline has to start from the top. When I'm very busy, I sometimes am interested in something one of my team members got up to that day or the day before, and it's only when I'm on the train, I've got a half an hour train ride to my car before I jump in the car for another half an hour. And that's when I sort of free my mind to think, oh, I wonder how that meeting with Andrew went today. And so I'll be tempted to text him to ask him how the meeting went or to send a couple of photos out. But I have trained myself not to do that because that forces him to reply to me, which is not what we want. We want people to go home with energy to spare. We make sure that there's a sharing culture in the team. We try to make it so that everyone is over each other's work in times of absence. We need to make sure that there are clear processes in place for when someone's taking time off. I think some basic things like moving away from team dinners. Now, I know there are plenty of coaches out there that tell you that to create team spirit, you have to do all these team events, which includes boozy nights out with the team. I can't do that because I haven't got childcare. So that means I can't go to the events. I mean, we don't have those events at OB because of that, but I do see that happen quite a lot in the industry. We've moved the Christmas party to a lunch Christmas party. Yes, it still may involve alcohol, but it means that everyone can go home at 5 o'clock. What that means also for me, Lizzie, is that I don't make, now, yes, I appreciate this is a privilege and many people can't do this because they're at a certain level where they can't control what time meetings are made. But I recognise that people with obligations, whether they're childcare or they're sporting obligations or they've got medical appointments, I can't have meetings start before 9:15 because it's likely that I'll be late. I like to have meetings finished by 4:30, which means that if they run over, I'm still going to leave by 5 to get home for 6 to pick the kids up. But the boss needs to be doing this. We can't be having one rule for ourselves and then a different rule for everyone else.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But I think as well, there is a decline button on meetings. And I probably have found myself in this situation before. If someone sets a meeting after hours and I do have something else on or another commitment, there is a decline, and you can speak to your manager about changing the time of these. I think that's what we need to be discussing that with our managers and saying, hey, that time doesn't work for us. And I guess as also as someone who's under 30 and doesn't have any children or really out of work commitments, usually it's something that I don't really consider very often, is maybe putting a team dinner on after hours and not really considering it.
Something else that I think is important is I now, if I'm trying to organise a meeting with someone, whether it's a prospect or industry peer to talk about something, I'll ask if they've got any commitments. So do you have drop off, pick up, or any commitments that you'll have that day? And then I'll attempt to avoid them. So there's a lot of people that work from home. They've got to go pick their kids up at 3 o'clock. And so some of them are happy to still have the meeting on the phone, and I don't mind screaming kids in the background, but some people don't. So I sort of go on the front foot and make sure I try and fit into their schedule, but also let them know that I'd love to meet with you, but I can't meet before 9:15 because I've got to do school drop off this week.
Yeah, exactly right. So you've got us to a point now, Dalene, where we're all no longer going to be sending work text messages out of hours, and we're convinced our bosses are only having meetings between 9 to 5. So you're saying it's that easy?
I guess not really, but we've got these personal boundaries which we have to set for ourselves, and if we expect people to respect them, then we have to respect other people's personal boundaries. Now, this is a hard habit to break if you're someone that's used to overworking, or you're overworking and not getting paid for it. But I just recommend you start having conversations and really being honest with either your boss or your team about what might work for everyone. And I think sometimes in leadership, we make meetings suit ourselves, but it might not suit the rest of the team, or it might not suit the 4 other people that have got to join that team. So, yeah, we just, I guess, have to have more empathy.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, we've got heaps of questions. We've had a few questions come through while everyone was registering. So thanks everyone for putting your questions through. And we had a few questions on the chat as well. So I might kick off with one question we had. Can you recommend any time management or productivity training to help us get more done?
Yep. Thanks, Lizzie. I'm a huge fan of time technology. So you can go to timetechnology.com.au. It's training that I've done myself and I've put my team through. I think something else that we do as we move up through the food chain is we think we're very productive, and we think everyone that's less experienced than us is less productive. Now, that is simply not true, but it's human nature and it's a human bias that we have to think that. We can also get very cranky with people, either ourselves. We can say, geez, you're useless because you didn't get that project finished, or you can think about new team members that you've onboarded or team members that have been around for a while and they're not getting projects done, and you're just starting to think what's going on here. Rather than do that, I think we need to put everyone through some productivity training, and my choice is this time technology product. It can be delivered virtually. They fortunately started to do it in person. What it means is that we try and have an empty inbox every day when we leave the office. Now, I've slid off the wagon a little bit there, Lizzie. So maybe once a month I get down to 15 emails, but it's just a really neat hack that they teach you about how to manage your inbox and how to be more productive. And something else that's been invaluable for me and many of our team, believe it or not, so you asked me about time management and productivity. What's been really powerful for me is mental health first aid training. So I'll repeat that, mental health first aid training. It sounds a bit weird, but basically I've got a whole bunch of people in my team who have done the training. In fact, almost 100% of our workforce have, who are accredited to help me or someone else for that matter, should we find ourselves a bit down. They're trained to recognise the signs and can pull me aside and offer support. But it's not just me, it's our team and everyone in our industry and our community. The training's delivered in person over 2 days and it only costs a few $100s. And as I said, my trainer was Sharon Orapaleng, who's joining this call, and she's an accredited trainer. And I've delivered mental health first aid in a crisis situation, and I think it may have just saved a person's life. So I recommend, for those of you in the audience, to look up this course, to think about doing it. Please do the in-person course rather than the virtual. If you can, it's very powerful. It's very cost effective. For a couple of $100s, you can really empower team members to provide support, but also recognise the signs when they're doing a bit tough. Yeah,
well, moving into my next question, and I really don't want to massage your ego here, but you do seem to manage to get a lot of different organisations write good stuff about OBE Organic. There are so many case studies out there about different aspects of OBE and their business. So how do you do it? It's one of the questions.
Okay, you want me to give away all my secrets, Lizzie? Surveys. There's a few of you that know that I'm a big fan of surveys. I love industry surveys. I love health surveys. I love filling them in. I love a good survey, and I'll complete any survey that anyone sends me. I'll always fill in the free form text spaces with as much detail as possible, and I will always provide my contact information. So even if I'm critical, I'll always provide my contact information. And you know, the funny thing is that no one else does that. So that leaves this really nice space for the researchers having an organisation that's been really provided constructive feedback, and they're also willing to go on the record. So when you have legitimate researchers or peak industry bodies who are genuinely looking for insights and examples where one of their products or services has been effective, or legislation change has led to a positive outcome, we fill it in, and often we're highlighted in case studies. Speaking of which, if you jump on LinkedIn and have a look at my post from the weekend, AgriFutures, which is an important organisation in agriculture, have a community perceptions and worker experience survey. Please, please, please fill it in. It's really important that the 85 or so people that are on this call can provide their perspective. And if you connect with me on LinkedIn, you'll be able to see it. Otherwise, I might ask someone to put it in the chat if they can Google it now. It's the AgriFutures Community Perceptions and Worker Experience Survey. And there's also a really cool one called the Australian Social Connection and Belonging Survey. So jump on and fill that in as well.
Excellent. And also we had a question did come through as well, Dalene, from Alice. She was just wondering if you could link those other two training, like the time training and the mental health first aid.
So I might ask Kimmy, if you don't mind putting up the time technology training and also the mental health first aid, please.
Thanks, Kim. This is another question that we've got, and I guess I can probably give an example on this one. So the question is, what does being prepared mean to you? But the background is that I got to travel overseas on business with OB Organic, and always was taken care of by OBE to ensure that I was prepared for all of the business trips that we did. I know that you're going to probably mention here the travel doctor, but that was something that has always stuck with me, and the importance of having your team members be prepared for trips.
Yeah, I think, Lizzie, we've spoken about it's really important that you're pushing our younger, less experienced team members out there, whether that means domestically or internationally. If you are putting them on international flights, you need to make sure you're getting them to the travel doctor. This seems like a no-brainer, but I don't know many organisations that do it. There are funny things that can happen to people overseas. Unfortunately, I experienced a miscarriage on a business trip to Dubai many, many years ago. It wasn't all bad. I mean, a third of pregnancies miscarry, I guess, but it was pretty lucky that we had travel insurance. I had a comprehensive medical kit, and that I'd been to the travel doctor. Now, I think we're getting the wind up, Lizzie. So I think Catharine wants to make a few comments, and there have been some questions that have come in. Please connect with me and Lizzie and I on LinkedIn. And if we haven't given you the information that you need, we'd love to do that via LinkedIn, or you can jump on the OB Organic website and chat to me through there as well.
Thank you, Dalene. Thanks, Lizzie. Yes, we probably could keep going for another half an hour, because when you registered, a number of you did put a number of questions in. So as you can see, Dalene has kindly offered for you all to connect with her on LinkedIn, and then you can, by all means, have that little side chat with some of those questions. I'll also circulate these questions to our speakers who have them as well. And if you want to, feel free to put together some commentary on this. I can then put it in the post wrap-up. When we circulate the recording of this, which will be going up on the Meet Business Women website. So please feel free if you'd like to send through some further commentary or questions, and we'll aim to address that. But connection through LinkedIn will be great with both Dalene and Lizzie. We've got about 3 minutes, so there were I'll just address a couple that went into the chat. There was one from Britt. What are your tips on challenging power structures and bringing in the power of collaboration?
Well, I think you don't have to do everything on the public record, Catharine. So there are fiefdoms, there are structures in the agriculture in Australia that are not going to change just because you're cranky about them or we're cranky about them. We still can affect a lot of change. It's important that we know who are the doers and who are the sayers. Sometimes the doers and sayers aren't the same people. And we can connect with the doers behind the scenes. We can give our opinion. It doesn't have to be on the public record, and we can actually get a lot of things done. So I think it's about knowing who's in the ruck. So you've got the leaders, you've got the captains, and they're out there public facing, and they've got a job to do, which is sometimes positive, and sometimes they've got to deliver messages that are not welcome by the industry. And then there's the ruck. And sometimes it's better that you're friends with the people in the ruck. You don't necessarily need to be friends with the captain of the team.
Yeah. And just finally, this is an interesting topic, and it's something that I've already got earmarked to get a great speaker on for the October conference. And it's around imposter syndrome and self-sabotage. So any insights, in a minute, in a 60-second wrap up from you around that, of how to stop that self-sabotage, that inner dialogue, that imposter syndrome, and just embracing some confidence of you knowing your worth, knowing what you're good at doing and where your strengths and weaknesses lie, and just embracing that in a true way.
Well, I think it's asking for constructive feedback from peers that you trust. I decided that I needed to have a mentor that was someone way, way, way up the food chain compared to me. And I actually reached out to a woman who is on the board of many organisations in agriculture in Australia. And I didn't know her at the time. And I sent her an email and I said something to the effect of, I think you're amazing. Can you be my mentor? And what that means is when you come to Brisbane, can I be your +1 at events? And can I have a coffee with you every 6 months? And she replied in 24 hours and said, yes, I'd love to. and she's given me advice every now and then. I went to her last year and I was thinking of applying for a board position, and I'd written what I thought was a fantastic 2-page summary of myself, and I passed it to her over coffee and I said, what do you think? And she said, this is not very good. And I said, well, I spent the whole weekend writing it. What do you mean it's not very good? And she said, well, you've written all about yourself. You haven't written about the organisation and the strategic plan of the organisation that you're applying for. And I thought that was so amazing, that feedback. And I ended up not applying for the board, but I thought, gosh, that's another lesson someone's giving me a clip under the ears, that it's not always about me. It's about we and the organisations that we're working for and the industry that we represent.
Yeah, I can even add to that. I mean, this was supposed to be your masterclass, Dalene, and I haven't worked for you for over 5 years now, and you still decided to give me the opportunity to speak in this forum. So I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity, and you have to do that and give me the time and the platform. So thank you.
Thank you both. 101, we'll let you all get back to your day. Thank you so much for joining Meet Business Women Masterclass. I've just popped a little link in the chat there if you want to find out more about membership. And this recording will be available under the free resources section of the Meet Business Women website, but I will also circulate that link to everybody that registered when it's up. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.